Hello again, wrestling fandom. I am Christian with Duality of Wrestling. Thanks as always for checking out the podcast and the channel. We appreciate you all being here. So we just had AEW Dynamite wrap up last night for August 19th's show. It wasn't quite the go home show to All In. We've got one more Dynamite and two more collisions left before All In, but we're getting pretty close. So most of our builds are pretty well locked in. Most of our feuds are quite well settled at this point. I don't think we're going to have too much that's new added to the show at this point. So we had a pretty decently packed show last night to be able to, continue setting up this big pay per view, which is now also past 40,000 tickets distributed. So that's pretty great. And it seems like it may actually surpass the 2024 All In terms of ticket sales and attendance. So again, AEW seems like they're in a really good place right now, and I could not be happier for them. Now, we've got the show opening last night. Excalibur was a little bit confused as we opened up the show. He thought that we were kicking off with the Elite match that actually closed the show, the Elite Trios match. We actually started off with the United Empire of Will Ospreay, Francisco Akira, and Hinare against the Don Callis family trio of Lance Archer, Rocky Romero, and Brian Cage. We saw a really good assisted senton in this match from Will and Akira to Rocky, and we also saw a similarly assisted cutter onto Rocky from Will and Francisco. United Empire worked really, really well together. Rocky did the sliding goal soccer football whatever country you're from you want to call it taunt towards the end of the match. That led to Will hitting a brutal hidden blade to the back of his head to allow United Empire to pick up the win. I'll preface by saying both this trios match and the trios match to close the show were essentially showcase matches for the All In bound. So in this case, Will Ospreay, but Hinare and Akira also looked pretty shining in their victory. And then obviously the Elite towards the end of the show were given most of the in-ring spot time there to make sure they look good heading into their respective championship matches. We then moved to a Renee Paquette segment backstage where she brought in Okada. Okada stated that, if Fletcher wins, he'll be happy for him in their international championship match. But if Okada wins, that he expects the same from Kyle Fletcher and that he expects for Fletty to raise his hand in the center of the ring. That transitions us nicely into Tony Schiavone bringing Kyle Fletcher out to the ring. Fletcher said he expects Okada to have his back and to help him retain the international championship, and affirms that they both hate Konosuke Takeshita. That summons Konosuke Takeshita from his trip over to Japan, unsuccessfully defending his G1 tournament victory. That tournament's wrapped up, so Takeshita is now backstage side, and they immediately brawl. We actually saw a pretty cool Poison Rana in street clothes, no less, from Takeshita here, and that led us into a power drive knee, raging fire combination to Kyle Fletcher to have Takeshita stand tall, pose with the championship to end the segment. We had some significant audio encoding issues at the end of this segment. We had a lot of I don't know, robot beep boop sounding noises, and that lasted all the way through the break, to be honest. So it started out, when we had the competitors going back up the ramp and to end the segment, and then it lasted all the way through into the start of the next segment, which was the sit down interview between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay with Renee Paquette, which honestly, I said in the preview I wasn't super excited for. Man, my expectations were completely blown out of the water. This was so good, you guys. This was legitimately one of the best sit down interview segments I have seen in quite some time. They took a lot of care here to go back through the extensive history that Ospreay and Kenny have, going back to Japan, going back to their early match in 2023 at Forbidden Door. They brought up so much. They talked about the differences that both of these competitors faced during COVID, for example. They talked about the how each guys were as draws, whether or not Kenny is legitimately a bigger draw than Will Ospreay. It was so thorough. Obviously they ended up getting to the point where they talked about Kenny and Will's health. Kenny, affirms that he couldn't train the way he used to, eat the way he used to, and basically be who he used to. But that stopped him from just relying on his physical gifts and made him be smarter in the way he trains and competes, which made him involved as a competitor, which is a great angle for them to take. I think that makes a lot of sense. Will says Kenny has always seen him as less than, never really truly as an equal. And we get the point brought up that no Englishman has ever won a world championship on their home soil, which is interesting. I mean, obviously, we expect Will to be the individual to change that, but I never knew that was a factoid. I never knew that no Englishman had ever won a world championship on their native soil. So that's another nice, fun element to this match, and it comes into play a bit later as well. This was a really, really great sit down interview segment. Like I said, I wasn't excited for it beforehand. I didn't think it would do much for the feud. I was wrong. This really set the stage to make it a bit more personal. At the end of it, Kenny even brought up Will's son likely needing a new hero after Kenny beats him, and that obviously set Will off pretty good. And it was a great way to build that tension a bit more and bring some more emotion and make it feel much more personal. Babyface versus babyface feuds are not always good at doing that, but this is one where we're definitely getting that. They're building off a lot of their previous issues and previous programs, and they're accelerating that process. They're making it an equation rather than just something that's a one-off. And I really like the way AEW does that in general, and certainly they're doing a great job here. We now move to the TBS Championship four-way match between Maya World, Hikaru Shida, Persephone, and Chris Statlander. Again, we get some pre-taped comments at the start of the match. Maya World seems like she's almost working heel a little bit in her comments. She, talks about how this is her world now after she beats all of her opponents in this match. She really didn't get much of a pop in her entrance, but I think this, you know, little cockier side of Maya lends a bit more towards heelish. I don't know that she has the chops to pull that off yet. We'll see. But I do worry we're in a territory here, noticing the no pops. And throughout this match, Maya didn't really get much of a reaction. Frankly, Chris Statlander and Persephone were both much more over with the Baltimore crowd than Maya World was. And I worry we are out of territory like we got to in WWE with Roman Reigns during Reigns' breakaway from the Shield and when they were starting to build him up. They were very, very cognizant of making sure Roman was always booked well. Everybody knows the keep Roman strong memes or make Roman look strong or whatever it was. I feel like that's where we are with Maya. We always have to make Maya look good, give Maya extra time. I don't like this. I feel like even taking my own personal opinion and my own personal taste aside from this, I feel like it's having an effect with the audience where they can easily, reject someone they feel like is being too pushed too far, too fast, isn't necessarily meriting the push they're getting. That's not to say Maya has been bad since getting her Owen push and now her TBS title run, but is she really ready for it? I think this match specifically kind of exposed that Maya was a little bit more green, especially in comparison to her much more tenured opponents in this match. And it really starts to make you question whether or not Maya can shoulder this burden of the position she's in. And I think the fans can see that too. That's where I think some of the lack of reaction is coming from. Obviously AEW fans, ever since Cody's departure especially, haven't really been one of the cheer heels and boo faces. Typically, it's not usually how the AEW crowd reacts, and AEW doesn't book them in a way to react that way. But I worry we're getting towards that territory here, where the fans are not going to like that Maya is continually getting all of the TV time and the push that she's getting over some other people, maybe like a Persephone, like a Harley, like a Stat, like Thunder Rosa, like other more tenured competitors who the audience might have a longer historical affinity for. As far as the match itself, we saw a fantastic leg capture snap German with a great bridge from Persephone on Statlander. And that's, again, like I said before in one of the review shows, I always look in those bridging suplex maneuvers for how high on the toes the competitor gets in that bridge. And Persephone did a great job of this. There was also a good spot right soon after where Shida hit a missile dropkick onto Chris Statlander, who had Maya up on her shoulders and forced a Samoan drop with the dropkick. Another nice spot you can do in multi-person matches, and they executed it well. Stat also had a really good kick out, kip up from a pinning predicament from Shida, but it landed her right into the path of an impressive spear by Persephone for a near fall. Stat later grabbed Sheeta off of the Razor's Edge position from Persephone and hit a nasty power bomb just in front of the buckles in the one corner. One of the good spots that Maya had in this match, she had a really great flipping splash on Chris Statlander to break up a pin on Persephone. And then we got to the finish where Maya reversed the Saturday Night Fever into a roll-up for the win. Maya World retains her championship. I predicted this. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people thought Statlander might take it based on last week. But I kind of predicted that Maya would walk into All In as champion, and this seems to cement that. However, I need to go back to this point of what the hell is AEW doing with their women's champions, especially babyface women's champions, winning matches via flash pins. We have gotten this so many times now from both Willow and from Maya. I don't know what they're doing, but it does not make them look strong. This does not look like again, I don't want to say it's not a clean win because it is a clean win. It's a wrestling move. It is a clean win. But it does not make them look tough. It does not make them look dignified as champion. It does not make them look strong. It doesn't make them look imposing. They just look like they're good at wrestling and lucked themselves into a position for a win. It looks more like they are winning via luck than they are via skill, and that is not what you want from your babyface champion, unless you are booking them to just be a lucky fluke champion. And that is not what they're doing. They're booking these women to look worse as champion for no reason. There's no reason that you couldn't have had Maya World cleanly get a finishing move pinfall over Hikaru Shida or Persephone. I don't expect it over Statlander. Statlander is more of a powerhouse type. She's also a babyface. I would never expect Stat to take the fall here. But there's no reason either of the heels couldn't have taken the loss here, especially considering Maya has already pinned both of those competitors. So there's no reason that can't happen. I don't get it. I really don't understand what AEW is doing with their women's babyface champions right now. They're not making them look strong. They're not giving the fans a reason to get behind them. And thankfully, Willow is good enough to overcome this. Willow has a great personality. She's naturally gravitational. She brings the fans in. We see this later in the show. The fans have long loved Willow Nightingale. There's no issue there. So Willow is succeeding in spite of the weird booking that she's getting. Maya World is suffering from it. She's being pushed too hard. She's not being given super decisive wins, and the crowd is not buying her as a result. So honestly, they need to change course here. I think it's a situation where they probably do need to take the strap off her. I don't know who you put it on. I don't know if maybe you turn Thunder Rosa heel and have her win it at All In. You obviously have to do something at All In with this championship. And I think you have to get it off Maya at this point. I don't think she's ready. I still think the better option is to send her to Ring of Honor and have her feud with Athena over Athena's ROH Women's Championship. That would make a lot more sense. But she needs more reps. This match really exposed a little bit of how green she is. I think it would really behoove her and the audience's reception of her for her to have a little bit more time out of the main roster spotlight. Later on in the show, by the way, we get Willow and Maya in a backstage segment where Willow announces that she is going to live up to her word that she gave Maya pre-redemption, that if Willow won the championship from Tekla that night, that she would give Maya the first shot. And we are getting that match on Collision. So we are getting Willow Nightingale versus Maya World on Collision for the Women's World Championship. I hate this. I really, really don't like this at all. I like the idea that Willow is being the woman of her word. That's what a babyface should do. Great. But Willow is embroiled in a very personal, very emotional, and vitriolic feud with Mercedes Moné that we get to later on in the show. There's no reason to distract from that by doing a match on Collision with Maya World, especially putting Maya where she's lacking babyface reaction into the ring with Willow, who is going to get a massive babyface reaction, is not going to do Maya any favors. And it's certainly not going to do anything for Willow either. This is a no-win situation for both of these women. It's not a good booking choice. I don't like it. We get a Brawling Birds promo backstage recapping the last two Collision encounters between the two teams. One where the Divine Dominion came out on top, one where the Birds did. The Birds basically said they're ready for a fight at All In. Cool. It's just a way to further that program without really having a match or interview segment or anything like that on the show. Just a quick pre-tape, and we're good. We got Jay White versus Jon Moxley for the Continental Cup semi spot in the semifinals, and the crowd was very hot for this match, even though it started off a little bit slow. It was much more of a scientific match than more of a typical brawling match that Jon Moxley gets into. I also didn't know a factoid the commentary dropped in this match that Mox has apparently never beaten Jay White in a singles match. That was interesting. So keep that in mind for the rest of this match. It was a very good mat-based match. It was not quite, the level of Nigel and Shibata, but it was very solid. I also do want to call out the great camera work we got in this match and in this show as a whole. Really, I noticed it a great deal during the main event, but I started noticing it here. We had a really great top-down shot from the center of the ring when there was a running the ropes, Blade Runner counter sleeper pin sequence that the over the top bird's eye view camera caught, and it looked really, really good. It was a very unique shot, and AEW really did a great job of that throughout this program. The finisher, our sort of finish of the match came from we had Jay White hit a Blade Runner on Moxley, who then rolled out of the ring to not take the pinfall. He's able to roll back in and catch Jay White in a gator roll, then moves that quickly into a bulldog choke. White's able to get out and out from that, only to be caught by the Death Rider, and Jay White kicked out. Everybody bought it. I bought it completely. I absolutely thought that was going to be the finish for this match. But, Jay White was able to persevere, although immediately afterwards, Jon Moxley locks in the sleeper, choked Jay White out to get the win. Great false finish spot in this match. It was a very fun watch. The crowd loved it. It was a really good way to put Mox over without making Jay White look bad. Following the match, White went to shake Mox's hand, but the dogs attack again. So again, we're getting this locked in this never-ending bullshit of the dogs coming in and attacking. Then the conglomeration comes out to even the odds. Gabe Kidd, however, then returns for the dogs to level O'Reilly and Orange Cassidy. Roderick Strong comes out and takes a poorly timed spear and leg tackle from Finley and Clark Connors for his troubles. Then the good, the bad, and the ugly, our trios champions, come out to make the save. Hangman starts running down the dogs, and David Finley's odd lime cowboy tiger stripe boots until the Demand come out to interrupt. The good, the bad, and the ugly remind everyone that they're the trios champions, and they state that anybody wants a shot at Wembley to meet them under the Wembley Arch at dusk because they'll be waiting. So there's a lot going on here. We have the Demand, we have the Lethal Twist, we have the Dogs, we have the Death Riders, we have the missing by their, Jay White's there, but the rest of them weren't today. The Bang Bang Gang, the Conglomeration. There's a lot here. And then, however, and a little bit later in the show, we get to a shot backstage of Prince Nana saying, "Did you say anyone, Hangman?" And Swerve says, "Don't say it if you don't mean it," and walks off. This really telegraphs where we're going. We all kind of have rumored and speculated about what Swerve would be doing, getting involved in a trios program with Hangman, considering Swerve hasn't been in a tag team all the way back to when he teamed with Keith Lee at Swerve in Our Glory when they were tag team champions. That was back in 2022. It was a long time ago. So we all kind of wondered, what's the deal here? I think we now know. I think we can safely assume the most logical outcome here is that Swerve is going to team with the incoming Daybreak, that is the former New Day of Kofi Kingston and now Austin Creed, to take on the trios team at Wembley. Wow, that's going to be amazing. I don't have any words. I can only imagine the pop that Daybreak is going to get when they debut at All In Wembley Stadium in front of at least 45,000 people. That's going to be insane, and I can't wait to watch it. MJF then sends out translator Jonathan Cruz to run down Andrade in Spanish. He talks a bunch of trash in Spanish and then finish it up with English and basically say he would have a match with Andrade if he was here, but Andrade isn't. And of course, that summons Andre from the ether to take out Jonathan Cruz in approximately 6 seconds. Andrade hits the Dia de los Muertos and the DM for the win, again, in approximately 6 seconds. This wasn't just a beating. It was an actual match with an official and everything. Andrade, following the match, called out MJF, but MJF airs a pre-tape of himself in a hot tub in Long Island, New York. He calls Andrade Andrew twice throughout this, which is kind of funny. Um, and then following that, Andrade hits a second DM to Cruz in response in frustration to MJF not being there to fight in person. We then moved to the Renee segment where she interviewed Willow and Mercedes backstage. They discussed a good bit of the fan disconnect for Mercedes versus Willow's connection with the fans. Mercedes brings up everything Willow has done to her, taking the TBS title from her, smiling over her when she got hurt in New Japan, throwing the cake in her face, and essentially calls her a bully. Typical heel tactics, but she does try to, make herself the victim here a little bit and tells her, you only have 11 days left to smile, you dumb bitch. And that heats up Willow. Willow pulls off her earpiece. Mercedes does the same. They go hunting for each other. And this leads to a pull apart brawl in the backstage area. They move out to the ring. They get a couple different pull apart spots with security in the ring. Crowd's loving this. I read a long time ago that like a great way to further a feud is to have a really good pull apart brawl with a couple times where the heels and faces are able to get at each other even in the midst of security. And this was no exception. The crowd was very, very hot for this, and it did a lot to further the way the feud is boiling right now. We then get Nigel McGuinness taking on Hechicero in the Continental Cup. Nigel comes out with his left ankle all taped up, and Renee and commentary play this up a little bit. Commentary says it's ligament damage. Renee notes that Nigel confirms his ankle isn't 100%, but says he hasn't been 100% through most of his career, so why should this be any different? Commentary also notes he's been in a walking boot before the match, so they're really selling the ankle injury angle here. And to me, that feels like an easy way to excuse a potential loss for Nigel, either in the semis or at All In. I'm going to personally predict at All In, but it does feel like they are setting up a loss in Nigel's home country. This match, however, Nigel had some solid chops that encouraged Hechicero to pull down the straps to invite more chops, but instead of that happening, Hechicero used the opportunity to drop kick Nigel's injured leg. That's a great heel tactic. I liked it. Really good ring psychology from Hechicero. This was another very good scientific match as a whole from two excellent technical mat-based wrestlers. We saw the finish come with Nigel McGuinness choking out Hechicero with a guillotine choke. So Nigel moves on to the semifinals. He joins Jon Moxley as having punched their ticket to Scotland next week, and they'll face one of Orange Cassidy, Kyle O'Reilly, Claudio Castagnoli, and Eddie Kingston, who will be clashing off in their respective matches on Collision on Saturday. We get a video package for Darby and Kevin Knight before Shivani invites Kevin Knight down to the ring. Darby Allin is called out to talk, but Knight stops him on the entrance ramp, saying he wants Darby to prove that Darby doesn't have any weapons on him. This is a nice little callback to the explosion stuff that Darby has been doing tonight, all the way back to Forbidden Door, Death's Door cage match. So they've been doing that a couple times. So it's a good, bit of character continuity. Darby shows he doesn't have anything, but then Kevin Knight triggers a pyro explosion on the stage that completely incapacitates Darby. It looked really bad, and it allows Knight to come in, hit that, what's becoming a trademark jumping belt shot, sets Darby up in the corner, and hits the full Van Terminator with the chair. Again, I will not call it the coast to coast. Stop trying to make me do it, commentary. It's not Shane McMahon's move. It's Rob Van Dam's. Knight hits it. That puts Darby on a stretcher, carried out of the arena. Stephen Borden comes out, Sting's son, to lend emotional support. And Kevin Knight, as they're leaving the backstage area, while Darby's still on the dirt, he talks a whole bunch of trash to Stephen Borden as well. This might be a vehicle. I know Borden has been doing a lot of dark matches on AEW TV. This might be a vehicle to get Borden a TV match and mini program here in the near future. I'd be interested to see that. I don't really know how good Stephen Borden is or isn't at this point in his training and career, but I think it would be a really good place for us to start here, and it would be a good means for them to extend this feud a bit more. Maybe you take 2 weeks after All In, you do a match between Kevin Knight and Stephen Borden, where obviously Knight wins, retains his championship, beats down on Borden a lot, and summons Darby to stop the beating from happening, and that gets us to a coffin match territory. That feels like a logical way we could go going forward. Finally, we get to our main event of the evening, which is the Don Callis family of El Clone, Mark Davis and Jake Doyle, taking on the Elite of the Young Bucks and Kenny. As I mentioned, this is essentially a showcase match for the Bucks and Kenny. That's not to say that there aren't good spots in this match. There are. Clone went for his DDT kip up spot, but stumbled a little bit during it, and it looked a little bit clunkier than it usually does. But following that, he almost quickly made up for it with a nice assisted leaping code breaker from him with the assist to Davis and Doyle, sort of launching him into it. That was pretty cool. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we had some great camera work in this match. I don't know if it was a drone shot or a wire camera that did it, but all of the movements between different areas of the ringside, getting close to the ring, further away at ringside, were really smoothly done. There was no jerky movements, and it really made you feel like you were there. It really put you at ringside, gave you a great perspective for the action going on. It was really, really great production value. So my hat is off to AEW for what they utilized from a camera standpoint in this match and on the show as a whole. It made everything more fluid and alive. It really just put you, all of us had a ringside seat for this match. The finish came with Kenny Omega hitting the one-winged angel to Jake Doyle to get the win. Afterwards, Don Callis' family of Archer and Roppongi Vice came out to jump the Elite until Adam Copeland and eventually Christian Cage came out for the save. Cage goes for the kill switch, but Beretta moves and the Bucks end up super kicking Christian. Cope takes understandable umbrage with this. The Don Callis family uses that to resume control in the ring and brawl out of the ring. Kenny's left alone with a mic, and before he can speak, Will Ospreay comes out, who had confronted him pre-match, but Kenny tells security to remove him. Omega is having him removed all the way up until Kenny calls him a little English bitch. Then Will rushes the ring and assaults Kenny until security restrains him, and this allows Kenny to hit the V-trigger. Kenny says he has one last lesson to teach Will, and then hits the one-winged angel on the table to the outside that the Callis family had set up during their initial rush to the ring, and leaves Will laying to end the show. This is fantastic. Kenny is really playing the art of a tweener character very well. He's still doing his heel stuff in the ring, but in his promo and everything with Will, he's playing the more heel role. I think this is great. This is a perfect way to utilize Kenny Omega, and this match feels so big and so interesting. Even if it's a foregone conclusion that Kenny's not going to retain, I can't wait to see it. That wraps up Dynamite for this week. Let me know in the comments what you thought. How did you guys feel about the two winners from the Continental Cup? Both of those I felt were pretty predictable, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. And mostly I want to hear your guys' feedback on my stance on the women's champions and the way in which they're being booked and winning matches. Am I being a bit too sensitive? Am I going over the top in my disdain for it? Or do you feel like I might be right on the money on this one? Let me know in the comments what you think. I will be back following Collision to either do some thoughts on Collision in the Continental Cup, or I will do just a Dynamite preview the way we did this week, or maybe both. So we'll check it out. But for now, I'm Christian. Thanks for watching Duality of Wrestling. See you next one.